What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Know Your Enemy. My name is Trendkill. Let's get into it. So here we are, back with another episode of Know Your Enemy. If you haven't seen this series before, the purpose of this series is to try to teach you a god from the perspective of playing against that god. Odds are, if you're new to the game, you're gonna pick one god and stick to that god, which is perfectly fine. Why wouldn't you want to play your favorite god? The problem with that is it doesn't give you the experience or the time to learn the other gods. In each episode, we highlight one specific god, we talk about the god's abilities, and we talk about common practices that you're gonna see on the battlefield. In today's video, we're gonna be discussing Agni, the Hindu god of fire. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is take a look at Agni's graph. Now you're gonna notice right off the bat, he does a decent amount of damage, but is kind of mediocre or worse in every other category. He obviously has no healing, so he has a 0 there. He's got a very moderate amount of utility, defense, and control, and his mobility is okay. He's got a very good escape move for a mage, but other than that, Agni is mainly focused on dealing medium to high amounts of damage and a little bit of control from very safe distances. So let's take a look at his abilities and see exactly why his graph is shaped this way. So first off, let's talk about Combustion, his passive ability. There is nothing really special about this. Just know that he can gain up to 4 stacks for every auto attack he hits. Once he maxes out at 4 stacks, his next Flame Wave or Rain of Fire will add a dot to the end of the damage that ability does. Unlike most other gods in the game, where their passive kind of flavors the rest of their kit, Agni's first ability, Noxious Fumes, is the flavor to his kit. Essentially, Noxious Fumes is a medium-sized area, and anytime a fire ability, so any other of Agni's abilities, hits Noxious Fumes, or Noxious Fumes hits that ability, it explodes into an AoE stun. Other than that, the fumes last for 10 seconds and they just sit there doing a very low amount of damage. His second ability, Flame Wave, is just a damaging ability. Not a lot to explain here other than the fact that this will ignite his Noxious Fumes. His third ability, Path of Flames, again, not much to explain here other than the fact that while he's dashing, he is immune to knockback. Other than that, this is his dash, this is his escape, and we'll talk about how you can use that to your advantage or what you should watch out for if you're playing against an Agni in the tips section. And lastly, his ultimate, Rain of Fire. This is what is exciting about Agni. Essentially, around Agni's head, you will always see a halo floating around it. That halo is either going to have 1, 2, or 3 fireballs floating around it. As soon as Agni gets his ultimate, usually at level 5, he's going to have 1 fireball floating around his halo. Now what that means is that at any time, he can use that fireball to rain a meteor down from the sky. That meteor is an AoE ground targeted ability that has a pretty decent distance on it. The interesting thing about this ability is that those meteors cost 0 mana. He just constantly regenerates those meteors throughout the course of the game. Every 20 seconds, he gets another fireball on his halo, meaning that he's got another meteor to use at his disposal. Now, a high damaging ability that respawns for free every 20 seconds means that Agni's gonna have some pretty decent sustain. While you're using mana to cast your spells and clear the wave, he's got a free meteor that he can rain down on an entire wave, and if he's got his passive stacked, it's gonna add another dot to the end of that, so it does a pretty decent amount of damage early on. So you can see that by going through his abilities so quickly, Agni is easy to understand, but he can be very hard to master. So let's go ahead and move into the mechanics section so we can see why he can be so easy to play, yet so hard to play well. Alright, so in the mechanics section, we're going to talk about some tips that are going to help you play against an Agni. First off, let's talk about Noxious Fumes. This, again, is a flavor ability. It's not really ever going to be used to deal damage, maybe some long-term slow damage, but even still, you're going to want to save that cooldown, or the enemy Agni's going to want to save that cooldown. A stun in Smite is obviously way more important than a very low damage 10-second dot. So if you see Noxious Fumes on the ground, don't step in it, because he could use any one of his abilities to stun you while you're there. Now, generally, an Agni is not going to telegraph a stun that badly. He's not going to lay down Noxious Fumes, just pray to God that you walk into it, and then use Flame Wave to stun you, which is why you're rarely going to be stunned by Flame Wave. And honestly, I don't really have that many tips for Flame Wave because it's just a straight up damaging ability. The only tip I really have for Flame Wave, his second ability, is in a combo that I will mention later. So how do you ignite Noxious Fumes then? Let's go ahead and talk about his third ability, Path of Flames. Now, not only is this his escape move, but on top of being an escape move, it adds a lot of versatility to his stun from Noxious Fumes. Now, remember earlier I said that you can gain a stun from Noxious Fumes by applying fire to it, but you can also gain a stun by applying Noxious Fumes to fire that is already existent. That is where Path of Flames utility comes in. Not only can you dash out of danger, but you can turn around and throw Noxious Fumes at the Path of Flames and stun anybody in the Noxious Fumes reticle. So what that means is, as long as the reticle of Noxious Fumes overlaps your Path of Flames by even a centimeter, it will create an explosion that will then stun the enemy. So as I said before, that adds a ton of utility to this ability. Not only can you get out of a fight, you can also create an AoE stun anywhere along that path. Now, that's not the only way that Agni can use his Path of Flames. Early on, you may see Agni clearing a wave with Path of Flames, and what he should be doing, or what you should be doing if you're using this to play Agni, is walking back to the archers and use Path of Flames back through the melee minions. What this will do is burn them over time, and usually that's enough damage added with a couple auto attacks, which you're going to be using to build your passive back up anyway, to clear an entire wave at like level 1 or 2. Now, that's only really a good strategy early game, or if Agni knows for a fact that he can do that safely. If Agni uses his dash to clear a wave, then you need to think very hard about taking advantage of that, because he literally has no escape afterwards. Now, that's not saying that he doesn't have a ton of burst damage or he can't still stun you, but just know if Agni's dash is down, he is a very vulnerable target. Now, that's not saying there's not a right time to use Agni's dash offensively. You need to be very careful if you're at low life against an Agni, because you don't realize how much ground he can cover in a very short amount of time. He can Path of Flames towards you and then use his ultimate to rain a meteor down on you from a very far distance away. So just remember, if Agni is at level 5 and you are low on health, you need to be very careful with how close you get to him. Now, while we're on the subject, let's talk about his ultimate, Rain of Fire. We've already talked a little bit about how much sustain this actually adds to him, so I'm going to touch on that very shortly. If Agni has his passive built up and rains fire down on the minions, it is going to deal a lot of damage to them and then burn them afterwards, which is probably going to come very close to clearing them. And he did that all with 0 mana. So not only can he do that from a safe distance, and he's got a dash that can get him out even further if he needs to, all these things together make him a very strong god. Now, also, on top of all of that, he can use his Noxious Fumes in between when he casts a meteor and when the meteor hits the ground, meaning that he can rain a meteor down from the sky before that meteor hits, cast Noxious Fumes underneath where it's going to hit, and create a stun explosion. This is one of those intricate details that take you from going, oh man, I can't get used to Agni, to, oh, now I get it. So if you're wondering why you don't see Noxious Fumes on the ground and all of a sudden you see him casting a meteor on you and you get stunned from it, now you know how that's happening. Now, all of that sounds like bad news if you're playing against an Agni, but there's a couple things about his ultimate that you can actually take advantage of. First off, as he's calling down the meteors from the sky, he does stand still. So it's not like he can be running around the map while he's casting meteors. Now, while he doesn't stand still for that long, understand that it is always bad times when a mage has to stand still to use an ability. Another thing a new player may not understand about his ult is that you have to right-click to cancel out of it. Otherwise, you will continually cast meteors until you run out. Now, obviously, if Agni has no meteors to cast on you, he is much easier to handle. So if he accidentally gets stuck in his ult and casts all 3 meteors at you and misses them all, you're in a pretty good spot. So for all of you who are watching this video trying to get better at Agni, do remember, if you just want to cast 1 meteor, you have to right-click after you've queued that ability up so that you don't cast another. And last but not least, let's talk about Agni's combo chain. If Agni is going to be aggressive and try to kill you, odds are he's going to Path of Flames into you, use his Noxious Fumes to stun you while you're burning, throw down a flame wave, hopefully with his passive proc so that it burns afterwards, and then start raining meteors on you until you die. Now, if he goes through all of that combo and you're still not dead, you have a great opportunity to kill an Agni, because literally his entire kit is gone. He thought he could take advantage of you, he chose poorly, and now his entire kit is on cooldown and he doesn't have a dash to get out. So playing against an Agni can be very annoying, but if you pay attention, you can take advantage of poor decision making, just like any other god in the game. So there you have it, guys. Hopefully these tips have helped you learn how to play against an Agni. Now, maybe you won't get burned. Moving on, normally we would move on to another class. However, there are so many mages in the game, we're gonna talk about another mage next episode. So thanks for stopping by and hanging out with us, guys. Hopefully you learned something, hopefully you enjoyed yourself, and please come back next week when we're gonna be talking about Janus, the Roman god of portals and transitions. Oddly specific.